I know, Sway, if you're trying to unmute, or if you're trying to talk, you're still muted.
Hey everybody, that's what he said. Sorry, technical difficulties here, but planner City of South Tucson.
All right, thanks, so Sway, and then Natalie.
You're still muted.
And Natalie, it looks like you're maybe unmuted, but your audio isn't coming through. But we can certainly bounce back. But thank you for joining. Feel free to jump back in if your audio comes back. Patrick Hartley.
Hey, good afternoon. Patrick Hartley, City of Tucson Interim Planning Administrator. Hannah, I do need to hop off at 2, maybe a little bit before for a conflicting meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Patrick. We got Ben on here in the city, so we're good. Okay, I think that is all the non-PAG folks. So we'll go over to the PAG side. Eric.
Hi, Eric Kramer, Senior Land Use Data Scientist from PAG.
Thank you, Eric. David Zinda.
Hello, David Zinda, Economic and Financial Planning Manager at PAG.
Thanks, David. And then Dustin.
Hi, everyone. Dustin Fitzpatrick, Environmental Planning Administrator, PAG.
Thanks, Dustin. Jeanette.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jeanette DeRun, Transportation Planning Director, PAG.
Thanks, Jeanette. And then Melanie Lawson.
Hi, good afternoon. Melanie Lawson, Public Relations Administrator at PAG.
Thanks, Melanie. And then Peter.
Hi, everyone. Peter Krosak. I'm the Application Developer Manager here at PAG.
Thanks, Peter. And Ralph.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ralph Granados. I'm the GIS Coordinator with PAG.
Awesome. Thanks, Ralph. And then Hansu.
Good afternoon, Data Science Administrator. Thank you.
Thanks, Hansu. And then we also we have Dawn, Jesse, Jeff, Crystal, and Bree. They're all of our awesome support staff keeping this meeting going. So they provide admin and tech support. So really appreciate them being here. Was there anybody that I missed? Things are kind of jumping around. All right. Hopefully I got everyone. So that covers introductions. So we can move on to the in-kind form. So let's read this really quick. So regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you are paid with federal dollars, please let us know. Okay, and time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda meeting materials. At the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. Time spent working on PAG RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. All right, so that wraps up that agenda item, so we can move on to the next item. So this is kind of a continuation of where we left off at the April 8th meeting related to the 2055 RMAP performance measures and targets. So if we could, let me just get control of the slides here. There we go. So I'm going to be presenting just very quickly, pretty much going over what we had discussed at that April meeting. I've stolen David Mitchell's presentation, so it's going to be essentially identical. Specifically, we're going to revisit some of those safety targets, which we'll discuss during the presentation. just as kind of some background, the framework for this performance-based planning was adopted with the 2045 RMAP back in 2016. And the first performance report was provided in the 2045 RMAP update, which was adopted in 2020. So on Friday, I did send a copy of that April presentation as well as the performance assessment that was included in the draft tip, just for some reference and background information. But yeah, I'm just going to go through these briefly. We are filling some gaps with the PMs. I'm following David Mitchell's departure in April. So if there's anything that myself or another PAG staff can't answer, we're happy to follow up. And we'll try and find, if I need a reference information, I'll try and find that as well. All right. So there are a number of performance measures and, of course, associated targets that we track as part of the RMAP. So the first has to do, so I'm going to start with the system maintenance category. So you see the performance measures over here on the left-hand side. So these are transit fleet conditions, that's the average bus age, bridges rated in poor condition for all public roads, and pavement condition on the federal aid network. So the adopted 2045 target is on this table, as well as the proposed 2055 target. So this would be the PAG staff recommendation. And there's also some notes on here whether we are on pace to meet the target. Others you might see that we're behind pace to meet the target. So that information is over on the right-hand side under the notes. But essentially, the recommendation for these three performance measures would be to extend the target, the 2045 target for the 2055 target. So again, we're like for bridges rated in poor condition, carrying that over, so maintaining below 10%. We're on pace, so the recommendation would be to extend that target. And then the same with pavement condition on the federal aid network, to reduce below 20%. And then for the transit fleet, so that would be maintaining buses that are under 7-year average age. So it fluctuates, but it's also on pace. So the recommendation would be to extend that target. So safety. So this was one, unfortunately, we are trending for the behind pace to meet our targets for safety. We had a good discussion about this at the April meeting. But you can see just all the performance measures that we track on this slide. The 2045 targets to reduce by certain percentages. The PAG staff proposal would be to extend those 2045 targets to 2055, keeping those same percentage reductions. So I think maybe I'll go through the other ones and we can come back to this one for discussion. At the April meeting, there was talk about being more aspirational, more ambitious with these targets, and maybe looking at something, maybe reducing by a greater percent, or even talking about perhaps a vision zero approach based on any policies that our jurisdictional partners may have in place or want to see. So I think I'm just gonna, go through everything, and then we can maybe come back to safety. All right, and for multimodal choices, you can see on the left-hand side again, all the performance measures that we track, the 2045 target and the proposed 2055 target. Previously, these two areas that were highlighted in yellow, those were recommendations that we wanted some feedback on. So the members seem to be in agreement with, for the bicycle facility miles, increasing this to 2,000 miles, and the pedestrian facility miles on major roads, increasing to 1,500 miles. And so this would be, based on the 2045 pace of 24 miles a year. Next is system performance. So this has to do with vehicle miles traveled, vehicle hours traveled, and travel time index. So you can see there are 4 performance measures in this category. Again, the 2045 targets and the proposed 2055 targets. So these, so the PAG staff recommendation would be to extend these targets. We are behind pace on VMT per capita. We're on pace for the travel time index. We're behind pace a little bit on the vehicle hours traveled per capita. And we are on pace, but trending away with the VMT and severe congestion. And I should mention, in that TIP report, there's a lot of information. There's visuals of graphs as well as data sources as well for these. The consensus at the last meeting was to, for members, was to, extend the 2045 targets to 2055. All right, and then the next one is environmental stewardship. So this has to do with greenhouse gas emissions, metric tons of CO2 emissions, PM10, PM2.5. So you can see all of the things that we track in this category. The 2045 target. So the recommendation, I'll start with the first 3 up here. So for onward greenhouse gas emissions, we are a little behind pace on this, but the recommendation would be to extend this target. And also for this one, it would be kind of tracking the total 1 million metric tons of the entire PAG region instead of per capita. And so the other 2, we're on pace to meet those. The recommendation would be to extend the target for the weekday metric tons of PM10 or PM2.5 emissions. The current target is the existing target is to maintain the current levels. The proposal is to kind of define what those current levels are. So for PM10 emissions, it would be to maintain less than 1.5 metric tons per weekday. And then for the PM2.5, it's maintained less than 0.5 metric tons per weekday. And then the weekday metric tons of VOC emissions reduced by 75%, which was the 2045 target. We are on pace to meet this. So the recommendation would be to keep that reduction and carry it over to the 2055 target. And Dustin, not to put you on the spot, but if there's anything you wanted to add in here, I'll give you the opportunity.
Hey, Anna. Yeah, that sounds about right with like you mentioned, with the greenhouse gas emissions before we had a per capita. So that would have allowed for an increase in greenhouse gas emissions with increases in the population. So we're looking at changing that to just the total 1 million metric tons in the region from transportation. And then, as mentioned also previously, we had the PM10 maintain current levels. Of course, we have the RITO PM10 non-attainment area, so we want to maintain but also reduce. So we're looking to provide the baseline that we would be able to comply with and stay under that total amount, metric tons per weekday. The rest of the NACS criteria pollutants, the CO, the NOx, and VOC, with modern emission controls, those continue to go down. So we kept those as they were.
Okay, thanks, Justin. Appreciate that extra information. All right, so I'm just going to move on to land use and transportation. So these have to do with job accessibility by cars, transit, jobs near transit stops, and also just the overall population near transit stops. So with all of these, unfortunately, we are a little behind pace on meeting the targets, but again, these targets, they can, they're aspirational, where we want to see things go. So the PAG staff recommendation would be to carry the 2045 targets over to the 2055 target and keep those same percentages for increasing accessibility by these different modes, also as well as jobs near transit stops and population near transit stops. All right, and the last one has to do with freight and economic growth. So this first one that's highlighted in yellows, this is total freight delay, which is currently an RMAP measure. So the recommendation would be to change it to freight travel time reliability, because we do have data for the fast track performance measures, which is called freight reliability on the interstate and non-interstate national highway system. So this previously did not have a target or 2045 target. So the recommendation based on the data that we do have would be to maintain 95% freight reliability on the interstate and 90% on the non-interstate NHS. And then these last two, total freight share and total freight tonnage. Yeah, there's this explanation is here why the target is not necessary. All right, I know that was a pretty high level overview of these performance measures. Again, based on the conversations at the April meeting, overall the working group seemed to be consensus in carrying forward a lot of these targets based on PAG staff recommendations. But if it's all right with everyone, I think I'm going to jump back to the safety really quick, and then happy to take any other thoughts or questions from anyone. But again, specifically with the safety performance measures, unfortunately, we are behind pace on meeting these targets for serious injuries, fatalities for roadway users. The only one that we are on pace for is the transit crash rate. So again, happy to hear any thoughts about maybe being more ambitious with these targets based on the last working group meeting conversation, or if we are comfortable just extending the 2045 targets to 2055. And feel free to just raise your hand or unmute yourself if you have any thoughts.
Hannah, do we happen to know how far behind we are?
So that,
like, are we close? Did we completely miss the target?
Yeah, so all of that is in that TIP report, that performance assessment in the TIP report. So let me find it here.
Well,
yeah, so for like a...
Oh, go ahead, Hannah. Sorry.
Oh, no, go for it, Jeanette.
No, I was just going to say, while Hannah gets the answer for you, Heidi, I will say that we have gotten new safety data from ADOT. We are QA/QCing it right now, so it's not available at this moment, but we're basing everything off of the work that was done for the TIP just a couple months back. So with that, Hannah can tell us where we're at.
Sure, yeah. So I mean, there's, it varies for each one, but just for example, the total pedestrian serious injuries, the 2022 number was about at 56, and our 2025 baseline is 50. So that's a bit up from that. We'll just look at total bicycle serious injuries. So the 2022 number for that was about at 25. So I'm just looking back at this. And so our 2025 benchmark is at 25. So we're a little more on pace for that, but we are a little falling behind. So yeah, I mean, it really just depends, like the fatality rate. So the fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, we're at 1.8 for the 2022 data, and our 2025 benchmark is at 1.2. So I don't know. I don't know if that helps. I can get some more numbers as well.
It
Heidi,
does.
but yeah, there's some good
I'm
graphs
taking a
in
look
that
at
tip
them.
report. Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, go ahead, Jeanette.
Okay. So what we are looking for from the staff perspective today is to get a recommendation from you guys to move this on to TPC for their discussion. So essentially, if you agree to our approach right now, we can take it to TPC for further discussion, or if there's any comments or changes that you want to make today, let us know. But that's kind of where it stands right now. So any feedback is great.
Hey, go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I would just add on that previous comment, maybe just showing it with relation to the previous benchmark and how far off we are hitting those targets when it is presented to TPC. I think would be valuable context and information.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Definitely. All right, well, if there, you have to take any of the other thoughts or questions on safety, or if there's any other performance measures that anyone, stood out to anyone, or any other questions throughout the presentation, happy to answer those as well. So feel free to jump in.
Hey, Hannah, it's Jonathan here.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dan, beat you. The only question I have, just kind of looking at this sort of for the first time in a while, is where the percentages came up with, and I'm guessing that those were established at the last update. But they jump around a little bit. I'm trying to make some sense of the targets. First, I thought it was 70% across the board for all fatalities, but then 33% for less serious injuries, but that's not true. So, just from a outsider's point of view, why do those numbers vary from, about 25% at the lowest to up to 70%, and what are those based on? I think providing the existing data and how close or far away we are from the last targets is helpful, but I think maybe a little more explanation as to where those percentages come from might be helpful as well.
Sure, and
Thanks, Jonathan.
Oh, sorry, Hannah. We should just sit in the same room. That way you can see us both and we can talk at the same time. It won't be so confusing. But yeah, so those targets were set back in the 2016 plan. I don't know exactly, why they were selected. So I don't know why 25 was selected for total fatalities versus 70 for pedestrian fatality rate. So I'm not 100% sure where those came from. There might be some institutional knowledge on this call that might have that. But because we're not tracking towards those targets, we're not, we're recommending just keeping them there and then see how we perform this next cycle or change them. But it's kind of the same for all the targets. Some of them, they all came about for different reasons. But yeah, I mean, that's why we're just not we're recommending just to keep them and continue to track them, because we've only really done one performance report for long range planning, which was in the 2020 plan. So to kind of see that continuum of our performance and how we're tracking for 2 cycles would probably, kind of give us a better idea of where we might want to make changes. But I mean, like Hannah said, that's open for discussion.
Yeah, I hear you, and I think there's I understand where you're coming from. I guess my reaction to that comment is, why do we have to wait, 20, 30, 40 years to get another cycle of data to say, oh, we're really missing the boat on fatalities, guys? I think what's unclear with the way we're representing this page, for example, and the percentages, is it doesn't give us an idea of, how bad the problem is. and how much of an effort or a target we are attempting to reduce the badness. So 70% just seems like a huge difference to a huge aspirational difference to reduce fatalities. And maybe that number is just way out of whack. Maybe that's too high. Maybe it's too low, depending on perspective. But I think if we had a better understanding of, how bad the problem is with some other data, and then maybe targeting a more reasonable and attainable target over the next 20-year plan or whatever, 25 years, so that we maybe can make some progress, because otherwise we're probably going to look at the same page here in 2055 and say, yep, we're still behind pace and let's extend that target, and nothing really happens. So I think a different approach might be a little better.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jonathan. I think the report that Hannah shared out via email might have it framed differently so that we can sort of see where we're at. And I do know that ADOT recently released their safety report, which I think that was last week even. So we do have some of that data, and we can definitely share it. It's just it would be I think it's the 22 data set we're looking at. But yeah, like the way it's shown here, it's just showing the target, and that's really all we need approval from at the staff level is like, do we want to stay with this target or not? Yeah, I think that it's interesting that you say that, because that you bring up the example of 70% reduction for fatalities. I mean, we might not ever see a reduction. Might not ever get to zero. But I think, we have seen ups and downs over the last several years in different categories, in different safety categories. So yeah, this is probably not the easiest way to see like the actual numbers, which we can get to you, but this is really just thinking about that target. Dan, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So just an observation on the bridges and poor condition target. We may have covered this before, but I've forgotten. So it's the 5-year average shows 3.1%, benchmark is 6.6, and then the 2045 target 8% in that report that you shared, page 3. So, most of the other targets, show going in the right direction. This one seems to be going in the wrong direction. So just wanted to make that observation. And then, maybe this page that you plugged up answers it, but is there like an aspirational goal that helps with pavement and bridge in particular to maximize efficiency from an asset management perspective? And, how do these percentages compare to that? Don't have to answer that today, but just some thoughts and maybe rhetorical questions on for pavement and bridge there.
Great.
Perfect.
Thanks,
No,
Dan.
thank you all. Yeah.
I guess if we have no other comments or questions, is everybody okay with us moving this on to TPC in August? Hearing none, that will be our next step. We'll take it on to TPC. So thank you,
Sounds
everybody.
good.
Thanks, Heidi.
Thanks, Jeanette. Thanks. All right, so the next item, so the 2055 RMAP survey, it just closed last Thursday. So we have Melanie Lawson here, who's just going to give a brief verbal update on some of the numbers and the outreach efforts. And then once we have a little more time to analyze the data, we can provide more information at the next working group meeting. All right, go ahead, Melanie.
Yep, thanks, Hannah. So as Hannah mentioned, the survey closed last Thursday. Our final total was 4,481 responses. We may have been caught up a little bit with the internet outage, but we were able to make that, almost 4,500 marks. So that was great. And for promotion, we did both a paid and a non-paid media campaign. So we had TV ads, print ads, digital ads, and then also English and Spanish radio. We also did in-person drop-in events to target underserved populations. PAG staff attended some food bank events and some events at neighborhood city centers. And through those drop-in events, we were able to engage over 300 people. So that was great. We also got some verbal feedback from people during those events, which we documented and will incorporate into the survey feedback as well. And so just wanted to also mention, and say thank you to the partner organizations, chambers of commerce, and the public information officers, and many other people who helped promote the survey through their networks. That all helped us reach that nearly 4,500 mark. And as Hannah mentioned, we'll have results to present in the future. We just wanted to share kind of the final survey number and then some of the methodology for our outreach. And that's all I have for the update. If people have questions, happy to take those.
All right, thank you so much. All right, does anyone have any questions? Feel free to raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourself and jump in.
This is another item that we're going to continue to present. We presented last week to the TPC. We'll present it again in August with the actual survey results, if they're ready. Hopefully we'll have those pulled together by August, if not September. But if there's any questions from this group, we can also discuss that as well. Thanks.
All right, well, I'm not seeing any hands up. So if there's nothing on this item, thanks so much, Melanie. We can move on to the next item. All right, so I think we're gonna spend the bulk of the meeting, the rest of our time as we need to kind of discussing the 2055 RMAP project list and kind of the associated components of that. And where we're at, but I think we will actually get started with an update from the data science team on the land use model, possibly the activity-based model as well. Yeah, just an overall RMAP development update. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Eric, and we'll start with this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just let me get it started first. Then I will just hand over to Eric. Then just will take back. Okay, yeah, thank you all and all my working group members. And so I want to just discuss about 2055 RMAP development update, and especially for modeling side, and which was actually discussed earlier at the PopTech meeting in July. I'm sorry, just June 24. But we, just in case, we are presenting and here at just the RMAP working group, and relatively just a short version, and hoping to just skip some and update. Here's the content, and we'll just go over and the RMAP and the modeling, and then just Eric will cover land use model update. And the Xiao is not available today, so I will just cover activity-based model update and timeline as well. So introduction of 2055 RMAP modeling. So for data science team manages the modeling tools in the three major and the models we have: land use model, the SAM-R, and the travel demand model, and the activity-based model. And we want to just use for this RMAP and the effort. And but we are using CT-RAMP2 and the air quality model, the MOVES4 and the AP42. First in the land use model, and which is the SAM originally, but there are some Windows operation system issues, so we recorded everything in R script. So we are using just the point layer instead of sub-area polygons. And also we developed in-house and the redevelopment module, and back in 2023, discussed with the jurisdictional partners through the PopTech members. For a travel demand model, and as mentioned, we are using and we are targeting to use our activity based model for RMAP and modeling. And the latest update made back in 2023, and air quality model is discussed and required for regional air quality conformity effort, and which is mainly for WHITO PM10 non-attainment area. So here's the like a flow chart, and as mentioned, we have 3 models, and a land use model, travel demand model, and air quality model. All those effort and getting first and our forecast year regional employment, population, scale freeze, and the known project, all the land use model related inputs used for land use model update, and plus just the base year population employment and the UA student information also, and used for land travel demand model. And the first year model 1 of the travel demand model, and then all those and the outputs and the traffic volume, and then accessibility, those performance measures will be fed back to just the land use model to develop the vacant land and if needed, and the redevelopment. Those development and employment and the housing units in forecast year will be fed back to in the travel demand model until just it reaches in the final year in 2055. After having just the final year, all those performance measures updated will be and shared and for our just the comparison and with different scenarios, including just Title 6 and the J40 Justice 40 analysis update. And as well as just we also need to and run and the air quality model, moves model, and the AP42, especially for WHITO PM10 unattainment area for air quality conformity. Those are the overall and 2055 RMAP modeling flow chart. And I will just hand over to Eric for land use model update.
Good afternoon. I'm going to be talking about the RMAP land use model inputs and some of the latest updates we've had. Let's see. Okay. So first is the housing unit inventory. We've our base 2024 units we've updated. And so we worked from the June 2023, where we had 486,000 units. And then we updated with our July to December permits completions, which is 2875 units, but there's some overlap with known projects, so it's 2661 units. And then we updated with our known projects for a base, but our known projects for which would be anything completed or expected to be completed during the 2024 year, and that added 2571 units. And overall, I'm moving on to known projects. So we did another round of revisions and discussions with selected jurisdictions to revise our housing and employment phasing. So you see the growth of the 6 different sectors over the periods, each 5-year period. And then, so we had, in addition to just keep in mind, the land use model inputs only concern the, don't include the Pasquayaki or Tohono Nation. Those are computed outside, or those forecasts are outside the model. So overall, in terms of industrial known projects, we have added 2,882 jobs, and retail has 5447 jobs, wholesale 667, and fire, which includes finance, insurance, real estate, is 1,170. And service, which is a pretty large category, added 29,516 jobs over the periods. And then public and government, excluding schools, is 647. And then the top table represents the regional employment forecast in terms of a net increase per interval. And the bottom table is the known projects per interval. And you see that 83% of the known projects are allocated by 2040 versus 50% of the forecast. So there is a quicker, again, that's to be expected. We know a lot more in the near term. And then known projects represent 42% of the total forecast. Again, known projects are in the model is something that get allocated first before the model does its kind of best guess analysis and then allocates spatially those are forecast. But known projects are the things that, again, we know or we expect them to happen in particular places at particular intensities. And okay, keeping going here. What's going on? Trying to advance. Okay, so when we look at the balance or our known projects, some of our known projects exceed the forecast any given year or any particular sector. Some of them exceed the total forecast, such as retail or wholesale. So we will need to make some adjustments to these projects. Some of the known projects exceed either in the model year, again, I've mentioned that, and or the overall sector. For dealing with the phasing, we will we'll borrow some of the allocate the known projects from future years. So for example, an industrial or within service, we can borrow from a future year to deal with that, to balance that out. But in other cases, such as the retail or wholesale, we will borrow from the service service sector, since that has the largest known projects, that will have the smallest impact on that sector. And in some cases also, in many cases, there's a lot of overlap between service and some other sectors. Or one business might have a retail component, but also a service component, things of that nature. So our residential, on the other hand, we have for known projects, we have 41,277 housing units over the forecast period that are known projects. And then when we look at the upper table, which is the net increase in the forecast, regional housing unit forecast, and we compare with the known projects per model interval, we see that 45 of our projects, our known projects, are allocated by 2030 versus 22% of the forecast. And then 94% of our known projects are allocated by 2040 versus 57% of the forecast. And overall, our known projects represent 49% of the total forecast. And then going to the balancing issues, nothing exceeding the overall forecast for any particular jurisdiction, but there are sort of phasing issues that need to be resolved. but overall, it's pretty good. Okay, I'm going to move on to the redevelopment model. I ran redevelopment allocation model for the 2030 allocation year. So I'm going to go through the different steps, general high level overview here. So we have our sector forecast of non-residential and residential redevelopment in square footage, and we translate that square footage into jobs and housing units. So keep going. Seems to be a delay on the. Okay. So the next step is we come with parcels. We use a parcel-based model, and we select the parcels using our policy-based geography, which is the infill incentive district, and we also use land use designations that prioritize redevelopment. This is currently just for the city of Tucson. And that initial selection yields 13,050 parcel points. The next step is to filter or to select those filtered by acreage. We don't want to redevelop anything smaller than 1/8 of an acre. We look at having a minimum FAR, a year built, and a type. And so we separated into two types, residential and non-residential. Residential. So applying that filter, we have 554 parcels for the 2030 allocation year. And then for the non-residential, we have 245 parcels for that same year. Next is to calculate a probability redevelopment by sector for each sector using our research-based methodology. There's one for non-residential and one for residential. And then we need to allocate our forecast units in order of probability. So the highest probability gets allocated first until at the densities that exceed the existing land use. So 70%, 1.7 times for residential density and 1.25 times for non-residential. And that's based on a redevelopment analysis study using 2010 to 2020 parcel data. So residential parcels, when we allocate, if the parcel exceeds 4 housing units or accommodates 4 housing units at least, we will consider the average square footage per housing unit to be 1,200 square feet. So typically like a 2-bedroom apartment. Otherwise, it would be about 1,800 square feet. And then non-residential parcels can also receive residential allocation if they allow mixed use. So those will get 1,200 square feet per housing unit as well. So again, more apartments than single family residential, but and then as I said, our allocation is parcel scale, but keep in mind this will be allocated to TAZ geography. So you shouldn't necessarily interpret the location as a precise prediction of what it's going to happen at the parcel level. It's really more at the TAZ geography level. And then getting back to our question of known projects versus the forecast. If our redevelopment allocation exceeds the forecast control sector for any sector, we will apply adjustments as well. So just we need to keep everything within the control totals. So in this case, for the residential allocation, we had 257 housing units for the 2030 year. And then for the non-residential, we had 99 industrial jobs, 290 retail, 35 wholesale, 113 fire, 1,303 service, and 225 public sector jobs for 2030. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Eric. And just in case if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt. And I'm going to just cover in the showers portion active base model update. So simply, and we are building in the base year the ABM model, just and required the input and the socioeconomic data and control data and others, and plus just the employment data by just the NAICS code. Then we take those in the roadway transit network and from our just the tip and the development. So as our just the base year network. Socioeconomic control data, we have a post level housing unit and data, ACS data for worker, age group, and the income, household size, and the vacancy. And the jurisdictional population, just the estimate, and the use it for our base year and the ABM, socioeconomic data input. This is more like the tangled and more just the precise and data processing work. And but we'd like to just have all those together, housing unit households and household population in just the year MAG level, and for our just the ABM input. MAG is a microanalysis zone, which is compared in the TAZ traffic analysis zone for our just the region. And we have roughly 1,100, and the MAG is roughly and 7 times more, and the 7,000 just the MAGs we have. And here you see that I want to just show some the characteristics and of our just the base year data, and I want to just quickly go over. Let me see, it's covered a little bit, and maybe. So you can see those in the density, and left side is the household density, right side is the population density. As you can see, and it's more, and household density is higher, and here is upper in the city of Tucson area. And if we have like here in the population density, you will see those in the south portion of the city of Tucson area is that popped out, and because of relatively just the higher and household size. And here you see those in the low income and the percentage, the map, and the right side contrast to all those in the low income. The right side shows the high income. So you simply just compare those two, and higher just the penetration on the city of Tucson, the area, and the south of just the city of Tucson area as well. And then it's the outskirts, or just the unincorporated Pima County area, you see those in the higher the income groups. And this is the one-person households, and the left side, on the right side, and the 7+ the households. And so simply right side, you see this, and a lot in the South Tucson area and the rural area. And then here is the no worker in the household, and the right side, and 3+ workers in households. then will show up, and more likely, and the opposite, and something just rural area, and especially the Marana and south portion of the city of Tucson and the Sahuarita area. We see more just workers in household level, and on the other hand, and no workers is highlighted in some of Oro Valley and some like the Pima County and the foothills and those in the Green Valley area. And here left side and preschool keys, we can highlight and town of Marana area and some just south side of Tucson and east side and some of the Sahuarita and area. And plus just on the other hand, and elderly people and over 80 years old. So you see in the Oro Valley and Pima County area and the others is rural area is covered and majorly for and the elderly people. Here is the employment and the centers need to be zoomed a little bit more, but more likely, according to our observation, in the downtown University of Arizona, shopping centers, and Tucson International Airport and the Air Force Base can be and found as a main kind of employment centers. We still need a little bit of just the data, and because of it's a little hard to just reach out and get those in the data information, and but we'd like to just complete those in the data and more likely this end of this month. And here is the timeline, and by 2024 Q3, we'd like to complete just the input data and the land use model activity-based model, and also the testing some of the land use model activity-based model, some iterations, and then possibly, and we also in the schedule in the PopTech meeting, August 28th, and discussing further update of our just the model test 2024 Q4, and hope to just have a draft output of a land use model and the activity-based model. And AOU population estimate review is mainly for PopTech meeting, PopTech and the committee members. I think that's all we have, and together with Eric, and if you have any question, and I'm happy to answer.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any questions? All right.
Great, thank you.
Not seeing anything, so thank you very much. And again, all these presentations will be posted online. All right, so next there's no questions. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. David Zinda, who's going to provide an update on the financial plan as it relates to the RMAP.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. It's good to be with you all. As introduced, my name is David Zinda, and I'm the Economic and Financial Planning Manager here at PAG. And today I wanted to highlight for you some numbers we're developing as a part of this 2055 RMAP financial plan. So as we preview these numbers again, please note that they are still more or less in draft form. And for those of you who may have been at TPC last week, this presentation will follow pretty much what was stated there as well. Okay, so this process has been a long one so far. Forecasts were initially developed beginning in March 2021. And from there, preliminary methodologies to generate revenue forecasts were presented to TPC throughout 2022 and 2023. And to sum up that conversation, we decided to use official forecast where available based on our consultation with the entities that collect that particular form of revenue. So for example, we use official RTA forecasts produced by the Eller Business Research Center, an official PERF forecast created collaboratively by ADOT's Financial Management Services and their economic consultants. I also generally try to follow ADOT's assumptions where possible, which they use in their own long-range plan, or what I understand them to thereby be. Among them, such that federal funding is constant over a long horizon year to year. The culmination of this work came with TPC approving the underlying framework described above in January 2023. However, there have been some minor updates since that time. But no large changes in methodology were conducted despite some of these minor updates. For one, we have now incorporated the updated official HERF forecast from ADOT as one minor change. These forecasts were issued in October 2023, and additionally, these revenue forecasts, as they're about to be presented, now reflect the new RTA forecast from the Eller Business Research Center issued in March 2024. And I've also updated federal funding figures to reflect current apportionments as available. Furthermore, and by the request of the City of Tucson, we've included about $140 million for bus rapid transit grant money. $70 million of that $140 million figure is assumed to come from competitive grant funding. And for now, the other half is assumed to come from the City of Tucson. There will still be some minor modifications as we go forward. And as we speak, I'm incorporating revisions from each of you, our member jurisdictions, regarding the amount of local funding that you might have identified as being used for projects of a regional nature and should thereby be incorporated into the RMAP. In general, most of these revenue forecasts are presented in year of expenditure or nominal dollars. For example, the official ADOT HERF forecasts are presented in nominal dollars, that is with inflation. But the RMAP, by contrast, uses constant dollars in 2024 dollars, where the effects of inflation is removed. So that's why I will discount back in time, as you're about to see a revenue figure, say in 2055, to present day values using a rate of inflation to make that 2055 value into a 2024 value. In this way, we can match the present value of revenues with the present value of project cost in a relatively easy way. So here's the key thing. As long as the rate of inflation assumed here to be about 2.5% on average for this long time 30-year horizon spanning 2024 to 2020 or 2055, as long as that is approximately similar to the rate of growth in cost of projects on average through 2055, we should have a fiscally constrained project list budget using these present values. But if you think project cost will dramatically exceed an average rate of 2.5% over the next 30 years, which would be presumably tricky to predict, we can most certainly increase that inflation rate, which will then decrease the pool of money that you have to work with on a present day value basis as you assign funds to these various candidate projects. But for now, what I show here is assuming 2.5% on average through the life of the RMAP. On this slide, we see a summary of the assumptions that are used to generate these funding forecasts. So during the FAST Act, which was enacted in 2016, as well as the IIJA, which was enacted in 2022, federal funds grew at a rate of 2% per year. Consequently, I'm going to maintain the assumption and apply a 2% growth rate to all our federal funding sources, with the exception of one or two, for the life of the RMAP on a specifically nominal basis. That means with inflation. The exception is with the RAC funding slash NHPP slash NHP has a bit of an identity crisis there. That is money that is from like National Highway Performance Program, National Highway Program, that ADOT directly administers in our region for very large ADOT projects. And here we're assuming a 0% growth rate on a nominal basis, such that we follow the methodology that was once recommended to me by ADOT Financial Management Services for this particular revenue stream. For competitive grants, I assume 2.5 times the amount of actual grants that we had received since 2010, adjusted for inflation, with an additional $70 million oriented toward high-capacity transit projects as requested by the City of Tucson. Okay, so now turning to state revenues. I've used official ADOT forecast for the HERF side of things, 12.6 and 2.6, which are available for the first 10 years on an ADOT official basis. After that, I extrapolated the revenues based on a decreasing growth rate implied by that official forecast on a nominal basis. Arizona Department of Environmental Quality funding has never really changed. It's always been $267,000, more or less, I think. But I am assuming, as you can see here, just a modest nominal growth rate of 0.5% to maybe allow for the possibility that similar program funding somehow becomes a blip on the radar somewhere down the line in 30 years. So turning to local funding, RTA forecast, our official forecast from Miller Business Research Center, and we specifically employ here the pessimistic scenario. And I will note that the horizon on this particular RTA forecast in this RMAP goes beyond 2046, which current RTA Next discussions have been centered on, right? So we're assuming going all the way through this horizon of 2055 with these RTA revenues. So you may see a dollar amount at the bottom line that's a little bit different than you may see in other committees. The maintenance of effort funding is determined chiefly by inflation as measured through the GDP deflator. This is by statute and is Arizona revised statutes. And so MOE funding is assumed to increase at our average assumed rate of inflation of 2.5%. Local budgets were provided by you all, and specifically we asked you for the next 10 years of funding that you would be willing to provide for projects of a regional nature, what I call RMAPable projects. So I took all those values that you submitted year by year, and I added them up. And after the initial 10 years, I averaged all those values together and increase them by a real growth rate of 1% each year. There's also additional local funding source you see there called Tucson High Capacity Transit. For that bus rapid transit funding, assumed to be $70 million across 10 years, which means $7 million per year for the purpose of this project and kind of forming some of these revenue estimates. From there, I assume 20% of that $7 million, or about $1.4 million, as funding for ongoing maintenance and operations for this project. There's also a Tucson mass transit funding category that you see there, and in conversations with the city, it was found that the general fund provided around $69 million this past budget cycle for funding for transit this year, which is assumed to be the case going forward into the future. This category also helps to compensate for what was previously identified as fare box revenues, which do not appear to exist for now. Okay, so here's a funding breakdown for federal funding in particular, and I'll give you some tools to be able to, or some pointers to navigate this. Probably won't spend too much time. There's a lot of information on here. It's really for your reference or to help answer questions. So the blue table shows year of expenditure forecast with inflation, and the green table shows the effects of inflation removed from those forecasts as dollars are presented in 2024 constant terms. You'll also notice that I truncated the table such that you see the initial forecast from 2024 through 2034, and then we skip to 2054 to help make for a less cluttered slide. But all those years in between, we're just compounding the previous year's value at a constant rate of growth. Or when we take it to constant dollar, we're discounting it back at the rate of inflation. So you should be able to fill in the gaps if you really wanted to do that and identify that trend for yourself. Or you could reach out to me and I could just give you a spreadsheet, I'm sure. In some cases, you'll notice declining revenues on the constant dollar basis. And this is because the rate of inflation exceeds the rate of growth for these funding sources. Now, historically, this has been true, at least in recent times, as the rate of inflation that we have all experienced has exceeded the increase in apportionments of federal funding. For example, I think in the post-pandemic world, we may have had inflation year over year ranging from maybe 5% to 8%. But the year-over-year growth of STBG, for example, was only 2%. So it really eroded on the purchasing power of those revenues, so to speak. And once again, I show this slide for reference and answer any questions you got any. So let's go ahead and take a brief look at the state and local funding. So once again, this is for reference. So I won't spend too much time here. And most of these ones were actually copied directly from official forecasts. It does include the HERF 12626 and the RTA and others. We can see the local budgets are the summation of all the numbers that you put forth for me, at least through 2032. Thereafter, that number in 2033, for example, is going to be the average of those numbers before in that boxed area and growing at a rate of 1% per year, at least on the constant dollar basis. And I guess I'll go back real quick and just note, you'll see some other boxes around these. For example, the RAC funding or National Highway Performance Program. Those first 5 or 6 values came from ADOT as they are programmed in the state transportation plan. The 169,806 is an average of those numbers, which is constant on a nominal basis as instructed by ADOT. So what this is all to say, these little boxes indicate either programmed or official numbers, and then what comes after is when we start to put in a trend. Okay, so in total, I would imagine that you have around $17 billion to work with. Though that number after the 17 is probably going to change a little bit, up or down a few million to a few hundreds of millions of dollars, depending on how we finalize some of our last remaining numbers and polish them off. But I wouldn't expect too much of a deviation from around 17 billion. And this is in 2024 dollars. So the combined total of all project costs should, in theory, not exceed this threshold so as to be fiscally constrained. And of that 17 billion, your largest bucket of funding, as you can see there, is in local funding. And this is especially helped by the RTA tax generated revenues, in addition to the funding that you have identified as your local contributions. Also was likely the most restriction-free form of funding and easiest to use on a variety of projects as well. So with that, I am happy to take any questions as you may have them. That completes what I plan to talk about in the course of this presentation.
All right, thank you so much, David. Dan, it looks like your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, David and Hannah. Sorry I didn't mention this before, but I had to do some research. And so just wanted to be clear whenever we get to the point where we have the actual list of projects, for the projects that are utilizing the assumed discretionary grant funds, we'll just need to clearly mark as illustrative in order to show fiscal constraints. But otherwise, no additional comments or questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? Yep, go ahead, Jeanette.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, David. So yeah, as David mentioned, this is a conversation that's been ongoing at TPC. We're also looking for comments and feedback from this group. And if we hear none, we will move forward with David's assumptions to the TPC meeting for their blessing. On this, we're still waiting for some outstanding information from some of our jurisdiction partners. So over the past month, we've met one-on-one with every partner, and we're waiting for some actual numbers to come in. So if you're one of those jurisdictions that we're waiting on, please reach out to Hannah and I as soon as you can. But we don't feel like any of that information is really going to derail from David's methodology. I think we feel pretty confident in the methodology, and that would be how we would move forward, and that the $17.107 amount there on the screen would be the number that we fiscally constrain the plan to. So if anybody has any comments or questions about that, speak now, or we will move this item up to TPC and then assume that 17.1 figure is what we're going to constrain the project list on. Thanks. Fantastic. Well, I think, yeah, seeing and hearing none, we'll do like an auctioneer here, and that 17.107, 481 is going to be the number that we fiscally constrain to. And unless David gets another little bit of information, but we'll use this methodology, stick to that number for now, and move it on to TPC. Thank you.
Jeanette, I would assume when we give you our dollars and thoughts on our projects, because we're one of those agencies, would that change? Would you change these numbers, or you're keeping these as is?
So this isn't factoring the project costs. So that's another topic we're going to speak to. But yeah, so we'll dive right into that. So for project costs, we are still waiting for some of you guys to update your project costs. Make sure that you're doing that and get that to us as soon as possible. We are going to accept project cost changes up until the end of this month. So July 31st is, I believe, a Wednesday. At that point, we're going to lock in project costs. And that way we can see where we are with that fiscal constraint. Right now we're waiting for some big projects to get those costs. So I don't really want to guesstimate at what that number will be. But we'll get that back to the working group and then to the TPC by sometime during the month of August. That does include RTA and RTA Next projects. So we've been working with Rick Ellis to make sure that those cost estimates are also solidified. And then moving forward from that, we need to kind of just to close that door for changes. That way we can approve the project list and move on into modeling. So that's kind of where it stands right now. But yeah, for the sake of, what's our total revenues going to be for the duration of the long range plan, 17.107, 481. All right. Any other questions?
I think that's, not seeing anything else for this presentation.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hannah. Thanks, everyone.
Sure. Oh, and then not adjourned quite yet. Sorry. Yeah, I'm just gonna, I don't know if there was anything else you want to add, but if not, I can jump in to kind of where we're at with the projects and maybe some kind of some recommendations and some changes to the multiple sponsor and PAG project specifically.
Yes. So thanks, Hannah. And thank you, everybody who met with us one-on-one over the past month. Very helpful. You guys are great at providing information and updates for us. So we've taken all of those comments and suggestions and updates, and we put them in the Project Explorer. There's still a few lingering comments that we're waiting for from you guys, but we do have a few sort of updates that we want to share now based on those conversations. We might have a couple leftover questions, but really just want to encourage you all to follow up with Hannah and myself sometime, hopefully this week, and get those updates. I won't call anybody out. You know who you are. But if we don't hear from you by the end of the day, by the end of the week, we will be calling you. So with that, I think Hannah had a few that we just wanted to point out that you'll see so that there's no like coming out of left field on them, and then we'll take some questions and comments.
All right, thanks, Jeanette. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. If I can find the right screen. All right, can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I'm not a little out of practice with the Zoom interface. Okay, there we go. All right. So as Jim mentioned, yeah, we've met with gone through the project list for each of our jurisdictional partners, and just based on those discussions, I just want to point out just some things they'll probably bring for recommendations and with the full project list, which we're hoping to do at the working group meeting next month. So I'm just going to walk through these pretty quick. And we can open it up for discussion or any questions. But I'm in Excel here so I can highlight some cells. But the first 6 projects here, so these are were additions into the Explorer from the city of South Tucson. So these are projects that are actually specific to the RTA Next safety and active transportation element. So again, everything is updated in the RMAP Project Explorer they have access to. So you're welcome to go in there, see what all the projects, any of these new projects that have been added in since our last meeting. I know we kind of walked through this when we met with everyone one-on-one, and I know it's probably may still be just a little confusing at this point, but anything marked as tentatively in plan in the RMAP Project Explorer, that's kind of part of our preliminary, very draft project list for the 2055 RMAP. So That's kind of how you can, keep track of what might be included at this juncture. Of course, not finalized yet, but that's how, we're keeping track of these projects. All right, so this 216.23. So this was one that we brought to the working group as a recommendation for a little bit, but these are Sun Shuttle vehicle replacements and support vehicles region-wide. So it's just a specific project to replace some Sun Shuttle vehicles specifically. This proposed project cost of 20 million, about almost $21 million, was proposed by our transit staff. This just very recently was added in, so you will now see it with an actual identified project number. This 54108, this is alternative energy and fuel vehicle infrastructure. So this is one, depending on where we land once we get all those updated cost estimates for projects from our members. Depending on where we land, this is one that we may recommend an increase in funding for, just based on the grants available, where the region is moving as far as what, more charging stations, more alternative energy infrastructure. So this is currently at $7 million. So this may be one that PAG staff may propose an increase in funding for. The same goes for 2118, multimodal safety enhancements. So based on our earlier conversation with our performance measures, especially with safety, we are behind pace and turning in the wrong direction for those. So this would be another one where we could potentially increase the funding for, depending on where we land with the total project cost with any updated cost estimates. Okay, and then 109.03. This was another one, potentially combining with a few related projects and increasing the cost just a bit for enhanced transit amenities, new bus shelters, bus shelter improvements. And this next one, 202.98, these are bridge improvements region-wide. So this was something based on our discussions with our one-on-one discussions with members. Definitely wanted to include that in here as a multiple sponsor regional project. This language, the proposal right now is to expand it to also include, but previously it was just the construction of new replacement bridges, expanding the scope a bit to include maintenance, deck repair, and barrier walls. And this is another one that we may propose to increase the funding for. All right, and these next two, these have to deal with pedestrian facilities and bicycle facilities. Region-wide, so filling in those sidewalk gaps and filling in the bike lane system as well. So these are projects that we would potentially recommend increasing the funding for, based on, what the preliminary results, the survey and the investments in active transportation in the region. Jen, I can't remember, was there something you wanted to add for these two?
No, we did receive a comment. I don't believe it was through the RMAP survey, but we did receive a comment. I believe it was in regards to the regional active transportation plan, where there was a recommendation to make sure that we clearly differentiate between bike facilities and pedestrian facilities. So these are obviously project numbers, project IDs that have been in the long range plan for quite some time, but we did want to make sure that we capture both bike and then pedestrian facilities separately. That's all. Thanks, Anna.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Jeanette. Sure. And this next one, this is one that we've discussed previously at the working group meeting, just a standalone specific project for the federal 5339 programs. This cost of about 50 million, so that was taken based on the financial plan. So again, we do have a another project for 5310 and 5311 programs, but this has been added and now has this project number, so you'll be able to see it in the Explorer. Yeah, this next one, just kind of tracking with the bicycle facilities above, just bicycle parking and other amenities region-wide. So that was one that we're recommending adding in, so that's 4 million. This next one, park and ride lots. There was interest in keeping this in from Tucson Transit, so we have marked this as tentatively in plan. High capacity transit enhancements region-wide. So this is a project that's consistent with the long range regional transit plan. So recommending having that in the list for 10 million is the funding amount in the Explorer. The next one, 63.18, that's all weather access improvements. So this is one that we also heard was based on our one-on-one discussions was important to have a project that covered all weather access. So this was in reserve. So we're recommending, just based on discussions with jurisdictional partners, to include this in the tentatively in plan list. And this one was actually a Pima County sponsored project. So we're recommending to have this a multiple sponsor project as well, or we could create a new ID number, but have that regional in nature for all weather access. This next one was transit infrastructure. So this would include, well, we already have one for Park and Ride, but would include bus turnaround, signalization, pedestrian crossings. So this was a project that was, there was interest from Suntran to include this in the project list. So this was 1.5 million. So that was a new project that was added. So again, you'll be able to see this in the Explorer. And then these last two, these were just updated cost estimates for these two projects. So Silver Bell or Road to Ina Road. This was updated, I believe it was closer to 100 million before. And then this 715.03, that cost and the scope was updated as well as one phase is complete. And we did update the cost for the second part of the project. Jeanette, if I missed anything or anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered everything. And unless anybody has any questions or comments.
I got a question, Hannah, on the pedestrian and the bike categories. Are those pretty open to any kind of bicycle and pedestrian improvement, or are they specific to just certain types of improvements? So, for example, could we include what am I thinking? Just different kinds of facilities for each of those?
Yes, I can hop in. Yes. So not only did we look at just like filling bike and ped gaps, like gaps in,
right.
We're also looking at ramps, lighting, landscaping, sidewalks, gosh, all of it. By bus shelters, there's any multitude, kind of based on the conversations we had with you guys on the amenities, plus also any sort of like intersection improvements that would need to be made, or crosswalks, those types of I hate to call them amenities because they are necessities in many situations, but but anywhere there might be a gap. And we anticipate a lot of those being identified in the active transportation plan.
Right.
So we want to make sure that any of the features that we might be recommending in that plan, that there's a home for funding of those types of things. Right. I know we did talk to Suntran as well for bus shelters and electronic signs, route maps, those things, and also the same type of connections between transit and active modes, so that there's kind of a seamless connection between anyone using the transit system and then doing their last bit of their trip via sidewalk or bike lane or something along those lines. So yeah, we hopefully covered all our bases. So if there's any things that you guys had in mind for a specific project that you want us to verify, by all means, email us and let us know. We'll make sure it's in there.
Yeah, just like a bike boulevard project for one example, and then a multi-use path as another example.
So I'll jump in really quick. So they're not shown on this list, but those are covered as well. Bicycle Boulevard is 193.08, and the shared use path, shared use pass would be 194.08.
Okay, great, thanks.
Well, thanks, Jonathan. All right, Davida.
Yeah, kind of along the same lines. And I know, Hannah, you and I talked about if we needed to merge some of those items, the transit infrastructure versus transit amenities. And I'm with, I'm with Jeanette on amenities, kind of makes it sound like it's extra, but it's not really. Based on the grant we just got, we also need to have green storm infrastructure in there somehow. So I don't know if we want to merge things or keep them separate or lump that into the infrastructure or storm. I didn't remember seeing anything about the green
Green infrastructure.
Green
Yes.
infrastructure. Yeah.
But this grant we just got for the $11.4 million includes green infrastructure at the bus stops. So somewhere, I don't know where it fits in. So we need to make sure, kind of like, does it fall under pedestrian facilities? Does it fall under, transit facilities? Does it just fall under craziness? Do we have something that's a catch-all to take care of those items?
So one option, and we can see if it's already in here or not, but one option is not necessarily to call it out as the project name, but include it in the project description. So where we have in there right now all weather access improvements. So we could put tune including, in the project description, right, what that would include. And there might be other options in there as well for
and we have bus stops, shelters, and we have sidewalks and connections, and we have pedestrian connections. So I don't know if there's a place, but I know when we talked originally, you guys wanted to kind of merge some of the projects or maybe expand them out more. So it kind of falls into what Jonathan was talking about just now.
Perfect. We will definitely dig in a little bit and see where we can nest some of those things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Davida. All right, any other thoughts, questions related to this or not? All right, well, I'm not stop sharing my screen.
I guess I just have one more comment, Hannah, if I can jump in. Just wanted to thank everybody, of course, for coming today. Also, please follow up with us on any outstanding items you have. We want to get the project list, a draft to this committee before August TPC. So Hannah will be sending out a doodle poll, if it hasn't gone out already, for a potential meeting before August TPC. Please reply to that as soon as you can. We will track you down and get a response from you. But thank you guys for your continued participation and helping us move this project down towards completion. Hannah, what did I miss?
Yeah. No, I think that covers it. I sent that. Yeah, I really appreciate everyone's patience. I know it seems like there's been about 500 doodle polls going out. And I know you're all, really busy, with your own work and projects, but I really appreciate, your efforts towards, the RMAP developments. Yeah, I did send a doodle poll out last week. So if you're able to fill it out by the end of the day tomorrow, that would be fantastic. That would just, really help us out with scheduling. If you can't find the link or didn't get it, let me know and I'm happy to send it again.
We would
Anything?
also appreciate you guys to continue discussions internally with your TPC representative if you're not the TPC representative, because some of you sit on both committees. But please have those conversations and keep your TPC member up to date, because it's gonna happen kind of quickly here over the next month. It is really important. I know Hunsu gave his presentation. You saw kind of their project schedule for the modeling. We need to get the project list to Hunsu and his team to move into that modeling phase. So any legwork that you guys can do, at your own jurisdiction conference table to help get those folks prepared to take action in August if possible, we would really appreciate that. And that's all I got, Hannah. So sorry to interrupt again.
No, I don't. I think that's yeah, nothing else for me. Any last thoughts or questions from anyone? All right. Seeing none, yeah, again, don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, not seeing anything else, so I think we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Well.